Shalom from East Texas. My name is Yvette. My husband Stephen and I are prison volunteers with Sabbath Keepers Fellowship and Prison Ministry. We've been blessed with the opportunity to host Joseph Dumont of Sighted Moon Ministries out of Ontario, Canada. Joe has spent many years teaching on the sabbatical and jubilee cycles as they relate to prophecy. We are happy to share Joe's teaching with you. We hope you will be blessed. Here's Joe.
I'm super stoked to be here, and I want to thank Yvette and Steve for hosting me, and for the team that they've assembled just to videotape this. This is awesome. This is more than I ever expected, and I want to thank you. And I'm thanking them now because by the end they may hate my guts like a lot of other people do and don't want to hear any more from me. So I teach about the sabbatical and jubilee years, and I show you how that reveals end time prophecy. It's part of the calendar. I don't know if I'm going to get into the sabbatical or the barley and the crescent moon type stuff. My website is signup.com. That's that's another big subject that we teach. But to understand how prophecy is revealed through the jubilee cycles, that's what I want to do today. So this is also a big subject that the Messianic community or Hebrew roots community or the messed up community, whichever one you belong to, has trouble understanding. So I'm hoping I can explain that to you today, and that's my goal. So again, we have the key to understanding all end time prophecy, I believe, is coming through the jubilee cycles. And I know that's a bold statement, and most people don't understand that, but we are in the final jubilee cycle now, and that is what I'm going to prove to you today. And then some other things that are happening right now, which is why I'm on this mission right now to try and warn as many people about what's coming to get ready. And I'm hoping that you're going to be able to prove this yourself. So where are we on God's clock? The Sabbath and the holy days, right? You all know that. Which calendar? Okay, that's a huge, big debate. Maybe not today. And all Christianity says we're in the last days. The rapture is about to happen. So when is the rapture? Well, it could be any moment now, therefore you better repent and start obeying. Well, that's not exactly true. You can know exactly when it is. No man knows the day or the hour. That's another thing that tells you which calendar to use. But most people don't understand that expression, so they don't get it. But we do. And today you're going to understand a lot of this stuff as well. You're going to understand exactly where we are in Jehovah's clock. Now I use Jehovah. If you use Yahweh, awesome. I'm not here to debate the name. If you use God, awesome. I'm not here to debate that either. I'm just glad that you know He's got a name. So I use Jehovah. So we're going to start in 2 Kings 19:29. So you can read that in your own Bible, whatever version you have. I don't care what version you use, just open a Bible and read it. 2 Kings 19:29. And this shall be a sign to you. You shall eat this year such things as grow themselves, and in the second year that which springs up of the same. And in the third year sow and reap and plant vineyards and eat the fruits of them. So I asked the people, what does that mean? Most people read right over top of it. And if you've got questions, I'm going to answer a lot of your questions as I go along here. And for time-wise, I hope you'll write them in the chat to Yvette. And if they're relevant, we're going to address them, or we're going to address them later. And if we don't address them, you can always write me at admin@sightedmoon.com, and I will address every one of your questions. So this is talking about a specific time. The first year, you don't plant or harvest. The second year, you don't plant and harvest. And in the third year, you can plant and harvest. So that is telling you of a 49th and a 50th year. That's the only time you have two sabbatical years back to back. When was this? And the reason this verse is so important is because it's very well documented as to when it took place. This took place in 701 BC. And I just got to be careful I don't get too far ahead in my notes because I want to tell you everything right here on this one slide. But 701 BC is the year that Sennacherib comes against Hezekiah. And Jehovah promised Hezekiah that he's not going to die this year. You're going to eat what grows of itself this year. You're going to eat what grows of itself next year because that's a Jubilee year. And you're going to plant and sow and harvest in the third year, which will be the second year of the cycle. And you're going to live. That's what he's telling them. This is a sign. A sign is the Sabbath. What are we talking about here? A sabbatical in Jubilee year. It's a sign. Another Sabbath. So 701 BC and 700 BC, right here in the charts, from this time right there, from 701 BC, you can count by 7 years and hit every sabbatical year throughout history, going backwards and forward. That's the amazing thing. Just in that verse alone, you don't have to know anything else, just that verse alone, you can go backwards and forward and hit every sabbatical and Jubilee year throughout history. From 700 BC, if you count by 49, you'll hit every Jubilee year throughout history. Now, I happen to have the most extensive collection of sabbatical and Jubilee years. We've got 89 proofs right now. Every single one of them lines up and matches these 2 years, which tells me that we're on to something. Let's see how far ahead in my notes I went. So 700 BC, or 701 BC, was the year that Sennacherib comes against Hezekiah. It's recorded on the stele in Chicago, in London, and in Jerusalem. It records this battle that Sennacherib didn't win. He says, I caged up Hezekiah like a bird in a cage. But it doesn't say he defeated him. He talks about all the other defeats, but not this one. And this is the most documented year in the history. If it wasn't for this year, we wouldn't know when any of the Hebrew kings ever lived. Because they didn't leave a record that we could line up with any traceable chronology. Okay, so here's my sabbatical years, 89. Again, I've got the best collection of them all. Here are just a couple that I have. 8 BC, Herod minted Shemitah coins. 28 AD, this is the one everyone wants to use for Yeshua. When Yeshua said this is the acceptable year. It's not a Jubilee year, it's 28 AD. 42 AD is mentioned by Josephus as a sabbatical year. 56 AD is a indebted note in the time of Nero. Now 70 AD is a really interesting one because the Jews want to say it's 69 or 68. And that's where the monkey wrench gets thrown into this. So if you want to go by Judah's reckoning, it's 69 or 68. But that's a whole other teaching that I can explain. And it's based on Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Akiva trying to make Simon Bar Kokhba the Messiah in 133, 134, a Jubilee year. So you can see 134 there on the screen. That's the Bar Kokhba revolt. Anyway, we won't get into that because it's going to take too much time and I got too many other things I want to share with you. So let's just move on to the next slide. So here are what I call the tombstones of Zoar. The tombstones of Zoar. This is a community at the south end of the Dead Sea on the Jordanian side of the border. And they've been discovering these for the last, 100 years, since the early 1920s. And they've been sold on the black market. They're just tombstones from the people that died. And these are the years they died, from 360 up to, I believe it's 515. And the amazing thing is that the tombstones give you the day the person died, the very day, so the 5th day of the week, the year they died in a sabbatical cycle, and they give you the year counting from the destruction of the temple in 70 AD. Now that only becomes a problem when you believe the temple was destroyed in 69 or 68. So most of the chronologists believe the temple was destroyed in 69 or 68.
I have one question.
Speak up.
So yes, sir. So you're saying that the traditional Jewish calendar, the Metonic calendar, is off from your calculations by, or those calculations by 1 or 2 years?
The Metonic cycle has been added to the Hillel calendar. He used it to help figure out the calendar in 358. You'll notice here that 358, where's 358? Somewhere right there. Okay, so these tombstones are after 358. If I had a little stick, that'd be great.
Okay, so but there's a disparity of 1 or 2 years, then you're saying?
Pardon me?
There's a disparity between what you have and...
The chronologists look at the tombstones and they dismiss them because they don't fall into their preconceived notion of when the cycles are.
I get that.
So the Metonic cycle helps them to do that. Okay, thank you. So I don't know if you can see that, but 358 is when Hillel created the calendar. He did that because of persecution.
Right.
So the Hillel calendar in itself then developed postponement rules, which only came into effect in the 11th century.
Okay.
Right? But they're also being used here. But we only have it documented in the 11th century. But we have documents here in these tombstones using the postponement rules, which is amazing because these tombstones record both calendars, both Hillel and the crescent moon and the barley. But because they don't match up with Hillel, they dismiss them. When you understand both calendars, these tombstones reveal so much truth. Now, again, I've got 30 of them. Most other people only have 17, but I've now collected 30 that I've found. Every single one of them, except for the Baalbek stone. The Baalbek stone, nobody knows what it's talking about. But the Baalbek, or the other 30, tell you the dates. Every single one of them matches 2 Kings 1929.
Okay.
That's the amazing thing. So we have Hillel coming up with the calendar in 358. The tombstones didn't start to change until sometime in the mid 400s. So almost 50, 60 years after Hillel. Then they start to change, and then some change and some don't. And the confusion becomes in not understanding the two calendars. I happen to understand both calendars. If it doesn't work with this one, it works with this one. Now, Torah Calendar is a program online that I use, and I can check how close they are to it, and then I can use the crescent moon to see, oh, it matches the crescent moon calendar, or I can use the Hillel calendar, which it matches. It gets quite confusing if you're not trained and concentrating on this. So that's why I don't, I just show you what I got. If you want to get into more details, I'd love to share it all. I'm looking for somebody that wants to understand the whole 9 yards. And those people are too few. So I'm hoping to find those people.
You found one here.
Okay. Get his name and address. We're moving there tomorrow. Okay. So these tombstones are available on the black market, and I found them online. They got pictures. I've got them all recorded. This is a book that I will put out. I'm in the middle of publishing a book right now and writing another book that I have to get done real quick, and you'll see why. And then this will be the one I do next. And this one is going to be a technical book. Nobody's going to want to be interested except this gentleman. And I'm going to sell 2 copies.
Yeah.
One to me and one to him.
I'll prepay.
But that's what it'll explain. There's so much information. When is Passover? Okay, when is Passover? Is it on the 14th or the 15th? Another calendar issue. Is it before the equinox? Can you have Passover before the equinox? Or not? These tombstones, 400s, they tell you. This lady, she died on Passover, the 15th of Nisan, of the first month. When? When was that? How did she word it? Whatever year it was, you go and look at it, it doesn't line up with Hillel calendar. It doesn't line up with Torah calendar, which goes by the equinox. It only lines up when you go and keep Passover 1 month ahead of the equinox. Oh no. And that, I've got 3 calendars like that, or 3 tombstones like that. That just disintegrates all these theories that I've only developed with the Hebrew roots movement. Again, the messed up messianics. So let's get back to what we're talking about here. Genesis 6:3. And Jehovah said, my spirit shall not always strive with man in his erring. He is flesh. Yet his days shall be 120 years. So people assume that Moses was preaching, or not Moses, Noah was preaching for 120 years. And that's not quite right. The word years is the Hebrew word shana. Shana. It can mean years. What it really means is a revolution of time, of which a year is, or a month, or a day, or a jubilee cycle. It depends on how you want to interpret it, and it also depends on the context. So you have to read it in context. So I just said it means 120 jubilee cycles. Oh no, you're changing what the Bible says. You can't do that. It says years. Well, let's just go to the Hebrew and read what it says. Revolution of time. What was Jehovah talking about? He's not going to argue with man forever. Mankind, not Noah, not Adam, mankind. He's not going to argue with mankind forever. He's going to argue, he's going to give them 120 cycles of time, jubilee cycles, and then that's the end of their rebellion, if you want. I'm really reinterpreting that verse.
Yes.
Okay, 120 cycles of time. So there's the word Adam. It doesn't mean, it can mean Adam, but it also means mankind. Okay? So we start with the creation of Adam, and we make Adam created, and the first year that he's created is counted as year 1. It does not count as year 0, because he wasn't created. When you are, I'm going to be 65 in January. This whole year is my 65th year, but I only get to claim being 65 when I hit January. A baby is not 1 year old until he reaches 1. Right? He's always 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, 9 months, 9.5 months. Okay? So the first year Adam's created was year 1. And all I did was I counted 7 years, and the first 7 years is a Shemitah, or sabbatical year. Then the next one is 14, 21, 28, 35, 42, and 49. Every Sabbath comes every 7 days. There's no breaks in between. There's no interruptions. It's every 7 days, no matter what. No matter how many holy days you throw in there, it's still, the Sabbath is every Saturday. Okay? There's a calendar issue. Sunset Friday to sunset Saturday is the Sabbath. 24-hour period of time. The sabbatical years, there is no break. It's every 7 years, non-stop. 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, all the way, keep on going. So when you get to the 50th year, that is the first year in the next cycle. Okay, so that's a big debate amongst a lot of people. I have tombstones to back it up. I have 12 contracts from the Bar Kokhba revolt to back it up. I also have, we got 89 sabbatical and jubilee proofs, which all line up. The Bar Kokhba revolt lines up with 2 Kings 19:29, so does Leviticus 25:2, which we're going to talk a little bit about. They all line up. And once you got them all lining up, they should work. If you believe that it's 50 years, knock yourself out. Start counting 4950, then go 1, 2, 3. Do the work. Do your homework. Prove your position. SightedMoon.com. Prove all things. I'll believe you if you prove it. Yes.
I was going to say that's what the counting of the Omer is. The counting of the Omer is training for the Jubilee cycles.
That's right. Did y'all hear that? Did y'all hear that online?
Absolutely right.
They all heard it? So the counting of the Omer, or the Feast of Shavuot, is an annual rehearsal of counting the Jubilee year. The 50th day, the morrow after the 7th Sabbath, The 50th day is always on Sunday. Sunday is the first day of the week. Go ahead.
Yeah, I get that. One thing that, and you're right, it is a rehearsal for the Jubilee or the Yovel. One thing that Shavuot, Pentecost, whatever,
Feast of Weeks.
that count does not have in common with the Yovel or the Jubilee cycle, is that it's a closed set. It doesn't restart the next day.
That's right.
That's
Okay.
true.
The Jubilee cycle, you start after 50, you restart again. Now, there's a large dispute within Judaism and many other circles that say the 50th year is also the first year of the next cycle, and then another group says, no,
Yeah.
the 50th year is the end of that set, and the count starts anew in the next year. Which do you say? Which is it?
I say prove it.
Well,
Well, anybody can prove it. It's very simple. We've shown you 2 Kings 19:29.
right.
That's the year 701, and 700 is the Jubilee year. So count either by 50 or 49. You get to do it, but when you do it, all 89 other sabbatical and Jubilee year proofs I have, which are available at siteofmoon.com, must match that Jubilee year if you count it by 50 or counted by 49. They all must match. They only match one way. So I don't care what theory you subscribe to, go and prove it. Once you've proven it to yourself, you know yourself that it's right, and you don't have to believe anything I say.
And so the match from that date in
2 Kings 1929. Yeah.
shows that the 50-year cycle is complete and the following year starts. as
So it
year
goes
one.
49, 50, 2, 3, 4.
So
The 50th year
is also the first.
is also the first, the same as Pentecost. James.
Well, it's interesting that if you look at the counting of the Omer, it's 50 days inclusive. In other words, as we would count it, it's 49 days, but it's 50 days if you include that
As the first day.
as,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. So, you know, we can get bogged down here. There's a lot more to go. And some of this is going to get answered as we go. So I'm going to keep pushing the charge through because I know Yvette's got me on a schedule and she's
Understood.
military.
I did
type
have
of-
a point in asking.
Yeah,
Rabbinical counting shows that it is 50 years as a complete set, and the following year would be year one, up
Yes.
until 70 AD.
yeah. They do not count
And
the
then they
Jubilee
start
year.
counting 49. As
The Rabbinicus do not count the Jubilee year. They haven't counted the Jubilee year. They say no one knows when it is because since Israel went into captivity in 723 BC, they've stopped counting the Jubilee year. It's only for when they're all together.
Well, they don't mark it unless they're in the land, but they do keep record of it.
Well, even that is not correct because they say they don't know. That's from Chabad.org and that's up to date. They say they don't know. But if you just go to the Bar Kokhba revolt, which was 134 AD, 133, 134, that's what, 800 years after the captivity, and they still knew when it was,
Right.
right? So, like, you know, we're being told stuff that's not true, but when you check the facts, you can find out. Let me keep going. So we come up to this point, Adam ate the fruit, right? And he was supposed to die that same day, right? He's supposed to die the day that you eat the fruit. Adam didn't die that day. He died 930 years later. So we've done the chronology, we laid it out, here's his death. So what day is Jehovah talking about?
1,000 years.
He's talking about a millennial day, which we call 1,000 years, which is not 1,000 years, it's 980. Oh, okay, so there's another toe I'm going to step on. Again, you have to prove this for yourself. When you do this, you will end up with the 120th Jubilee ending in the year 5,880 years, which is 120 times 49. So we can count all 120 Jubilees from 2 Kings 1929. We know there's 120 of them What we don't know yet is where that is in the cycle. You know, are we in the 50th or the 100th? Where are we? Again, your Bible will reveal the truth to you if you look. So there we have, it's off the screen, 5,880 years. That just so happens to match our year 2024. Now I'm taking a big leap here. I'm jumping ahead. You know, I don't want to spend all day on this one topic because we got a lot more to cover. But the information's there. It's very simple to learn and understand. 120th Jubilee is where we are now. 2044 will be the 49th year. 2045 will be the next Jubilee year. Okay, whether it's 120th Jubilee or not doesn't matter. You can count from 2 Kings 19:29, the year 700 by 49, you will end up at 2045. That you will do. 1996 was the last Jubilee year. None of us kept it. None of us obeyed Jehovah. I started keeping the 2009 sabbatical year. That was my first one. How many of you kept a sabbatical year? Just one. At the right time. Is it okay to keep the Sabbath on Wednesday?
No.
If it's okay to keep the Sabbath on Wednesday, then the Catholics are okay to keep the Sabbath on Sunday. Because they just changed it to suit themselves. If you are allowed to change the Sabbath or the sabbatical year to the year that you got baptized, which is what the Churches of God do, start counting from the year you got baptized, or the year you bought your property. I bought my property 5 years ago. That means I got 2 more years until I keep a sabbatical year. Well, then the Catholics can keep Sunday as a Sabbath. But if the Catholics are wrong for keeping Sunday as a Sabbath, and that's a sin, then it's also a sin to change the sabbatical year to whatever year suits your fancy.
Absolutely.
So if it's a sin to break the sabbatical year,
Caveat.
then
quit keeping
we need, pardon me?
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Caveat, we quit keeping the Shemitah and the Yovel when we found we were in error. Because of that very thing, what you just said. Because if it's not the right year, it shouldn't be kept in a wrong year.
Yeah. Keeping it at, if you're trying to keep it, Jehovah says he winks at your...
Ignorance.
The what?
Ignorance.
Ignorance, yes, thank you. I didn't want to call you ignorant. So,
All right, I am ignorant.
Ignorance is remediable. Willful ignorance is inexcusable.
and there are a lot of Hebrew roots who are willfully ignorant, who do not want to learn this because that means they'll have to learn to obey it.
And change.
Okay? And change. We're told to keep the Torah and to become perfect. Be ye perfect, as I am. We're not going to be, but we got to be striving to do that. The Sabbath, the holy days, the right calendar, and the sabbatical year. And if you're not trying, then he just says, stay over there. You've learned enough. We have this number 70 here. Okay? This is really important. Now, the calendar that I just told you about, I told the people here the calendar I just published at Amazon.com was the wrong one. It didn't have the 70 here, so we've just updated it. So if you got the old calendar, I apologize. Come and get the new one. And below it's 69. So we're going to now get into that. What do these numbers mean? Right? 69 and 70. And they match up with this 120th. Now we're going to jump to another prophecy. The Daniel 9:24 prophecy. Now I wrote a book in 2014 called The 2300 Days of Hell. 750 pages. Most people open it up and look at it and say, I ain't reading this. You got to read it. I'm only going to give you the top of the iceberg. That's going to give you all the details. If you want to know what this prophecy means, you got to read the book. So I'm just going to give you the Cole's notes. 70 weeks are decreed to your people and as to your holy city. So the first question is, who are Daniel's people? If you say the Jews, you're wrong. Daniel's people are the 12 tribes of Israel. And I spend 250 pages in the 2300 Days of Hell showing you who they are, tribe by tribe, through history. We can trace them through history. So just to sum it up, I'll show you one thing here. Before the captivity, they were called the Bet Omri by the Assyrians. The Assyrians are the captor, or the ones that are going to write history now. They defeated them. They're called the Bet Omri. But the Assyrians can't say Bet Omri, which is the house of Omri, who was a king of Israel. So they called them the Bet Kumri. Bet Kumri. Everyone say Bet Kumri. Kumri. Get that out of the back of your throat. You're hacking up a hairball. Kumri. Okay? Then after, so Tiglath-Pileser, he writes in the letters of Nineveh in stone, which we have in the London Museum, that the Kumri are now becoming the Kumeri. Okay, they didn't have vowels either, but this is the. Oh, Siri, go away. Okay, I got Siri talking to me now, asking questions. Then Sargon, in his letters in 704 BC. When did Israel go into captivity? 721, 722, 723, whichever chronology you want to use. Sargon in 704 is calling the Bet Omri, he's calling them the Gemeri. Okay? And then King Esarhaddon in 679, how many years have now gone by? Almost 50 years. He's calling them the Gemeri, the Gemeri, or Gemera. And then that changes to Gemeri. The Gemeri become the hard G, becomes a hard C. Gemeri. Then the hard C becomes a soft C, Sumerians. And these are the Celtic people. So if you believe that you are a black Hebrew and you are the true tribes of Israel, knock yourself out. Because what I'm about to show you then applies to the black people in Africa. Because what I'm about to show you is about to apply to the Anglo-Saxon Celtic people. This is not a race issue. I'm not, if you believe in Torah and you're keeping the commandments of God, you are grafted into the house of Israel, and I don't care if you're purple and pink polka dots from Mars. It doesn't matter what race you are, you have to obey. But the black Hebrews want to claim to be that tribe, and I knock themselves because they're about to be wiped out.
Ouch.
The Anglo-Saxon people are about to be wiped out. That's one of the messages I'm bringing to you today. You have to understand who we are. The 70 weeks of Daniel is a time limit as to how long we have to get it right. So 2022 is the year 5858 after the creation of Adam. 2022. 5782 is the Jewish year, that's what they're calling this year, until Rosh Hashanah, Sunday. Then it becomes, so right now we're in 5783 after Rosh Hashanah. There's 76 years difference. Here's the answer to why there's 76 years difference. There's 4 kings missing, and you can read those 4, well, you can't read them, but when you read Matthew 1:8, they're not there. And Azariah, also called Uzziah in 2 Kings 15:13, and is the Ozias of Matthew 1:8. Here are the reigns of each of these 4 kings. Ahaziah reigned 1 year. Athaliah reigned 6 years. Joash reigned 40 years. And Amaziah reigned 29 years. And these kings aren't in the list. That totals 76 years. Deuteronomy 29:20, where Jehovah threatened to blot out the names of those who served other gods. And in Exodus 20 verse 5 it says that the sins of the people will be visited to the 3rd and 4th generations of those who hate him. Where is that mentioned in the Bible? This is the only place. We don't see it happening anywhere else until you read Matthew 1:8. And there's 4 kings missing. Get out your Bible, go and prove it, see if these kings are missing. Learn about this stuff. So 70 weeks are decreed to your people. 70 weeks. What is a week? The Hebrew word weeks here is not a physical 7-day period of time. The word here is Shavua. Shavua. Now let me change the B to a V, which you can in Hebrew. Shavua. Now what does that sound like? Shavuot. Shavua or Shavua is the female of the male Shavuot. What was Daniel told to do? Seal up the books to the time of the end. How would you do that when just right out in front of everybody? You put it in a language that people, only Hebrew people would understand. Shavua. 70 Shavua are for your people. So it also means 7. You 7 yourselves. What's the Feast of Weeks? It's the Feast of Oats. The Feast of Harvest. The Feast of not the Feast of Ingathering. The Feast of Ingathering, but it's also the Feast of 7ing. Every Sabbath, you've 7'd yourself. Every Shavuot, you 7'd yourself. 7 Sabbaths. Right? What's another 7? Sukkot. Another 7. 7 days of unleavened bread. What's another 7? The sabbatical year. What's another 7? The Jubilee cycle. Every time you complete a 7, you are oathing yourself, you're rededicating yourself to Jehovah. Why does a woman go around her groom 7 times at a marriage? She's oathing herself. Right? When we look up the word Shavua, which is in Daniel 9, here's where it is used throughout the Bible. It all says the same thing. So Exodus 34:22, and you shall observe the feast of Shavua. When's that? The Feast of Weeks. What's the Feast of Weeks? The weeks, Pentecost or Shavuot. Did I just do that? Yeah. Oh, I got the same slide twice. So what's the Feast of Weeks? I'm speaking to the corral here. You all know that. It's Pentecost. Shavuot. Numbers 28:26. And in the day of first fruits, when you bring a new food offering to Jehovah in your feast of Shavuot, you shall have a holy convocation. You shall do no laboring work. Deuteronomy 16:10. And you shall keep the feast of Shavuot to Jehovah your God with a measure of freewill offering of your hand, which you shall give according to as Jehovah your God has blessed you. Deuteronomy 16:16. 3 times in the year all your males shall appear before Jehovah your God in the place which he shall choose, in the feast of unleavened bread, that's your first Hag, in the feast of Shavuot, that's your second Hag, and in the feast of tabernacles, your third Hag. That's 3 times you go up to the Jerusalem. There is a prophecy right there. Again, ask yourself, what does Jehovah care about grain all the time? Why is he always talking about the food? Because he's talking to a bunch of numbskulls that are thick and don't get it. He doesn't care about food, he cares about your souls. What's he harvesting? Your souls. 3 times in a year. He's teaching you his plan of salvation here when you look at this. The first resurrection of souls, unleavened bread. The second resurrection of souls, the feast of Shavuot or Shavuot. The third resurrection of the dead, Sukkot. When does that come? Over a 7 millennial period of time. This reveals all these things to you. You want to know when the rapture is? Study the holy days, Leviticus 23. It's simple. You don't have to guess no more. Oh, your date setting. No, I'm reading Torah. We got to leave our Christian stinking thinking that we bring into the Messianic movement, thinking that we learned a lot of good things at that church. We got to leave that at the door. We got to go back and read Torah with clear eyes. A Hebrew mindset. Can I say that without sounding Hebrew rootsy? Right?
Oh, Hebrews.
Hebrew? Okay. Read it from a Torah perspective. And leave our Christian thinking at the door. Daniel 9:26. Again, he's talking about Shavuot. Here. No, he's not. We're moving on. And after 62 weeks, after 62 Shavuot, Messiah shall be cut off, but not for himself. We'll come back to that. So the Feast of Weeks is Shavuot, the masculine plural for the feminine Shavuot. It's Pentecost Sunday. Okay, so this is the command to keep Pentecost. You guys all know that, and the audience knows that. We don't have to spend time here. I'm trying to get to some other good stuff here. The Feast of Weeks is 7 Sabbaths for a total of 49. Shavuot is a Sunday after the 49th day. It is Pentecost Sunday. It's the first day of the week. It's the first day of the next count to 7. 70 weeks are decreed as to your people and as to your holy city. So now let's change this and understand it properly. It's going to be 70 Shavuot. 70 weeks is 70 Feast of Weeks. Feast of Weeks is 49 days. 70 times 49 is 3,430 years. Daniel's being told that this prophecy is for Daniel's people. It's going to be for a period of time, 3,430 years in total. How do we prove this? How do we prove this? Know therefore and understand that from the going out of the command, so here's the scripture that Christians all take and they mush it together and they talk about 69 weeks. Right? This is where we get the 490-year prophecy from. Because we take the 7 and the 62 and make it 69. And the Messiah is going to show up after 69. And then, well, that's 483 because you got to take away 7. And from the 490, and that's when he's going to show up. So that's what year did he show up? 30. He died 30, 21, 31, 34. And whichever theology you want to use, they apply this. That's called the gap theory. Now, the gap theory was first created by the Maccabeans. They used this same prophecy to prove that John Hyrcanus was the Messiah. The next one to use it was Rabbi Akiva. He used it to prove that Simon Bar Kokhba was the Messiah.
Oops.
Simon Bar Kokhba. Right? Not Kokhba.
Shimon Bar Kokhba.
Kokhba, the false guy.
Well, that was his first original name.
Yeah.
Changed.
So they used it. But not one of the apostles, nor Yeshua, used it to prove that he was the Messiah. The next one after Simon Bar Kokhba was the church father starting in 180, and it was Julius Africanus who developed this into what we call today the gap theory, where Jesus is going to show up at any time, so you got to be ready, because the 7-year tribulation is about to start right tomorrow, because today is already here, right? This is where this comes from, and it's all bogus. But we bring it into our walk today as we start to obey Torah, thinking that it's valid. It's not valid. It's totally misapplied. You're going to prove that it's misapplied today. 70 weeks are for your people. Know therefore and understand that from the going out of the command. When did the command go out? Is that Xerxes, Ahasuerus? 452, 453, 455, whichever theology you subscribe to. Some people like John McCain, got some really wild numbers to work with. It's got nothing to do with Yeshua. And the moment I say that, people turn off, don't want to hear no more. It's got nothing to do with Yeshua. Be Berean. Prove me right or prove me wrong. But you can't prove me wrong until you hear what I have to say. So keep listening. Let's figure this out. The command to restore and build Jerusalem to Messiah the Prince. Who's Messiah the Prince? Everyone says that's Jesus. Okay? You guys call him Yeshua. But the Christians would call him Jesus. Messiah the Prince. My Messiah has never been a prince. I don't know who you're worshiping, but my Messiah has always been a king.
Sar Shalom.
Messiah the Prince is in your Bible. Google it. Look it up. Messiah the Prince is talking about one man. I'll show you in a moment. Here's the part we got to follow. 7 weeks, 7 Shavuot, and 62 Shavuot. Okay? 7 Shabu and 62. It's not 69, it's 7 and 62. The streets shall be built again. When did Yeshua build the streets in Jerusalem? Just give me one instant. Just one. And when did he build the wall? Okay, because it's talking about the wall. And when did he do that in times of affliction? There was no affliction going on at that time. There's a little bit of persecution, but not a war. It's not talking about Yeshua. So I asked this question last month, and this lady gave me the most astounding answer, and I asked her, when is the command? When is the command? She said the 10 Commandments. That is so obvious. Like, I never saw it. It's brilliant. If we count back 70 weeks or 70 Jubilee cycles from 2020, or from where we are now in this cycle, it'll bring us back to the Exodus. How do I know this is the Exodus? Well, because I counted forward from Genesis and I did the chronology from Genesis 1 through to the Exodus. You can do that. Anyone can do it. We're not going to do it today because it's going to take up too much time.
Interesting.
But the Exodus is not 1446 BC or 1250 BC. It's 1379 BC. Again, I'm stepping on more doctrinal toes. That's what I do. So now we count from the Exodus. We count from... Dale gets my little jokes. I used to work construction. I kicked people in the pants with steel-toed boots. Come on. So I upset the apple carts of a lot of people. We start counting from the Exodus. Who gave the command to Moses? Jehovah did. He said, Exodus 3:10, and now go, and I will send you to Pharaoh. Okay? There's one scripture telling Moses to go get the people. Exodus 3:12, and he said, I will be with you, and this shall be a sign between you and you that I have sent you. Second time he said it. When you have brought forth this people out of Egypt. Okay? Exodus 3:16, go and gather the elders of Israel. Okay? Who's saying it? Jehovah told Moses, go. Moses putting up a lot of excuses. I can't talk. I don't know what to say. I got sheep to look after. Exodus 3:17, and I will have said, I will bring you out of the affliction of Egypt. 3:18, and they shall listen to your voice, and you shall come, you and the elders of Israel, to the king of Egypt, and you shall say to him, Jehovah, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us, and now let us go. 5 times. Exodus 4:12, and now go 6 times, and I will be with your mouth and teach you what to say. Oh, I counted 7 times. There's 2 in one verse there. I missed it. 7 times. Jehovah said for Moses to go and get the people. That's what Daniel 9:25 is saying. The command to go and get the people. Know therefore and understand that from the going out of the command to restore and to build Jerusalem to Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again. Okay? This is a key verse. You got to understand it. Shalom. Welcome.
Shalom.
How do we prove this is the proper understanding? Again, prove all things. SideOfMoon.com. Prove all things. Right? I'm a ditch digger. What do I know? I got to prove everything. Nobody's going to listen to me. I got to prove it all. Prove all things. How are we going to prove it's not about Ahasuerus, or Artaxerxes, Darius, or Cyrus, or somebody else in the Persian kingdom? So again, I already mentioned this. It's first used by the Maccabees. It's been used by Rabbi Akiva. We've already talked about it, so I can skip through this. But Yeshua never used it to prove himself. It's not about Yeshua. 7 weeks. I'm really hammering this point home because I want you to understand it. We count 7 weeks or we count 7 Jubilee cycles from the commandment, from Moses being told, which is 343 years. And from that point, we are going to end up at Messiah the Prince. You still haven't figured out who Messiah the Prince is. So most Christians lump this together. We're not going to do that. So now we're going to just take this and we're going to start counting. We're counting Jubilee cycles. So although the Exodus took place here, Moses got told somewhere back here, I believe 3 years before, but some people believe it's only a couple weeks. Okay, that's another subject another day. But we're going to count the whole Jubilee cycle. So we got 1, 2, there's 3, there's 4 and 5, there's 6 and 7. After 7 cycles, Messiah the Prince. So that puts us into the 8th cycle. Who's Messiah the Prince? The year here that I want you to pay attention to, well, there's actually 3. 1040 BC. Who was born in 1040 BC?
David.
King David. King David was anointed by Samuel when he was a shepherd boy, somewhere in here. We don't know the exact year. Mashiach means, or Messiah means Mashiach. Mashiach means anointed. You are all anointed. You've been called by Jehovah. You are Mashiach. How many of you are Jesus? Just checking. But you're all anointed. Right? David was anointed by Samuel. King David was anointed in 1010 BC by Judah when he became king over Judah. 7 years later, in 103 BC, King David was anointed by all of Israel. King David is Messiah the Prince. Okay, what's the scripture that backs that up? Ezekiel 34:24. I believe it's 24. Brandy's going to check that for me right because I always get it wrong. 34:20. Ezekiel 34:24. No?
Just a little slow. Yes, sir?
Yes, sir. I got it right today. It says, Randy, read it out for them.
And I, Jehovah, will be their God, and my servant David shall be prince among them.
King David is your Messiah, the anointed prince. King David. So now the subject of Daniel 9:24-25 is King David. Now let's read what it says next. And Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks. We've just shown you 7 Jubilee cycles to Messiah the Prince. And then 62 weeks. That's 62 Jubilee cycles. That then brings us to, let's see. No, I'm getting off. I did this, did that. Come on, where's my chart? There it is. 67 and 62 is 69. See 69? Well, you can't see it down there. They didn't buy a big screen TV, just bought a half screen TV. So, okay, so 69 is right here. That means after 69 Jubilee cycles, King David is going to show up again. In this 70th Jubilee cycle now. King David. Whoa. What's going on? Something's about to happen. So let me back up. So 7 Jubilee cycles plus 62 brings you 69. So that's just, yeah. And when you count them out, so just let me go back here. Let me go back real quick. Whoops. I want to show you something else here. Okay, you can't quite see it. This second cycle is the 51st cycle since the creation of Adam. Right here it says it's the 50th cycle since the creation of Adam. The Exodus takes place after the 50th Jubilee year. How many Jubilees are we allowed? 120. Daniel's talking about 70 Jubilee cycles, so 120 and 70 and 50, that all works. Right? 50 and 70 is 120. Mm-hmm. So now we're in the 120th, right? And King David is expected to show up at this time. Messiah the Prince. Okay. But then it also says in the 70th week, Messiah the Prince is going to be cut off again. Not again. It's going to be cut off. something else. We're gonna talk about that in a moment.